Shadow on the mirror. The old Blackstone Manor, surrounded by a black forest, stood on the outskirts of the nearest village, as if exiled by time. In autumn, its stone walls were covered with mold, the windows were covered with a thin veil of fog, and the garden seemed to grow on its own, without man or law. This Friday, all members of the Gray family gathered at the house to discuss the legacy of the recently deceased head of the family, Albert Gray, a wealthy collector of rare books and works of art. The legal reading of the will was scheduled to take place on Saturday morning, but as usual in such cases, the family evening began with hostility and suspicion. In the hall, a widow, Lady Margaret Gray, sat by the fireplace, a cold-faced woman with a dark veil. Next to her is her stepson Felix, a 32-year-old unemployed playboy who came from the continent. Albert's niece, Professor Edith Lorne, arrived from Scotland, a woman with a hard look and a stony voice. Behind her is a young lawyer, James Conway, who inherited the deceased's practice. The last two to arrive were Alex Morton, an antique dealer who was supposedly an old friend of the deceased, and his companion Laura, who was silent and always tense. The servant Edgar, dry as if carved out of wood, served the wine and left. The clock struck 9, and judging by the looks, everyone was waiting for tomorrow morning with different intentions. "I don't understand why we had to gather here," Edith said irritably. "In this mossy mausoleum. Albry bequeathed to spend everything here. Tomorrow you will understand why," James Conway replied and sipped his brandy. "He loved this house. And his secrets." "Secrets?" Felix chuckled. "If you're referring to that story about the missing governess, it was 100 years ago." Margaret whirled on him. "You didn't know Alberi. He was superstitious. He believed that in this house, something lives. Sometimes he looked in the mirror in the library and said, 'It's watching.' My God, Mother, you're the same as always." Felix grinned. That evening, towards midnight, Laura went out into the corridor to get water. She quietly slid across the wooden floor, holding the candelabra. And then she saw a shadow. The shadow didn't belong to her. She was different, taller, thinner, and strangely distorted. She slid across the wall in front of the mirror and disappeared. Laura screamed. Alex Morton stormed out of the room. "What happened?" "There was someone there. In the lobby. Shadow." He exchanged glances with her and silently escorted her to her room. In the morning, the guests were awakened by a knock on the door. The servant Edgar stood pale as lime. "I'm sorry, Lady Margaret. She's not answering." The door to Margaret's room was locked from the inside. After a moment's hesitation, Alex knocked it out with his shoulder. It was quiet inside. The air smelled of wax and lavender. Lady Margaret was lying on the bed. There was a look of horror on her face. Her fingers clutched the bedspread. There is a dark mark on the neck, as if from a rope or silk ribbon. The window was locked from the inside. There are no traces, no fighting. No one heard a sound at night. Only one thing seemed out of place. The mirror standing against the wall was turned to face the wall. Someone didn't want her to look like him, James Conway said, or for the mirror to see. No one knew if it was a joke. During the day, everyone remembered something strange. Alex claimed to have heard light footsteps at night. Edith saw Laura leaving the room around 1 o'clock in the morning. Felix said he woke up feeling like someone was standing in his doorway. "Maybe it's just nerves," Felix tried to laugh it off. "Or is the house playing its old games with us?" Conway shook his head. Lady Margaret died with the door closed. No signs of penetration, but with an expression of horror. Someone was in the room, or something. The next day, he contacted a private investigator. It turned out to be Bernard Mason, a former Scotland Yard officer known for his methods. He wasn't looking for evidence. He was looking at people. When Bernard arrived, the first thing he said was, "Do not touch the mirror. It may have seen more than any of you." He slowly walked around the room, then picked up one object from the floor, a small hairpin with a black stone. "Whose is it?" No one answered. "Okay, then I will ask another question. Who would benefit from Lady Margaret's death before the reading of the will?" Silence. Only the clock was ticking. Felix chuckled. "It seems to everyone. The question is, who broke down first?" Detective Bernard Mason did not believe in the supernatural. He worked with murderers, thieves, liars. But now, standing in front of the mirror in the dead woman's room, he felt like something inexplicable was getting under his skin. The mirror was facing the wall. Why? And who turned it? Margaret was very superstitious, James Conway said quietly, watching the detective. She forbade the servants to leave mirrors uncovered at night, especially this one. It's been here for 100 years. Gift from Vienna. "Do you believe in a curse?" Mason asked dryly. "I'm not. But when a woman dies with horror in her eyes, with the door locked and without a trace, I'm starting to doubt it." Mason silently wrote down the words in his notebook. Where did she keep the key to the room? She always had a bundled set on her belt, and one key to the bedroom. But he wasn't on the body, Edith interjected. "Where's the bundle now?" "We haven't found it." Mason whirled around. "You didn't find it. Not in the room, not among her things. It was important. Someone took the key, entered, killed, and took the key with them. So it wasn't suicide out of fear." Over the next 2 days, Mason observed, asked short questions, and recorded small details. He knew that a lie is like a shadow. It moves differently from the truth. Felix Gray was defiant. He drank, flirted with Laura, and was sarcastic. But he locked himself in every night. Professor Edith spent hours in the library, looking through Alberi's old letters, making notes in a notebook. Alex Morton locked his room with a key, but wandered at night. Mason noticed him going out into the garden at 3 in the morning. Laura avoided talking, and all the time she was drawing something in her notebook. Strange symbols, shadows, faces, and only Edgar, the old servant, seemed inconspicuous. But Mason knew that servants always knew more than they were telling him. He found it in the storeroom. "Have you been working in this house for a long time?" 37 years, sir." "Tell me honestly, who else besides Lady Margaret had access to the key to her room?" Edgar fell silent. Then he said, "Sometimes she trusted Miss Laura with the key. She said she was looking at the house honestly. And more." "Yes?" "Mr. Alex," he asked about the mirror. "A week ago, I wanted to buy it. Margaret said it would never leave this house. On the third day, Mason entered the deceased's bedroom at night. He set up the camera in front of the mirror and left it facing the room. In the morning, watching the recording, he froze. There is an empty room on the screen. The clock strikes 3, and, for a moment, a silhouette appears in the mirror. Tall, thin, no face. He's standing behind the camera. But there's nothing in the room itself. The camera didn't register any movement, just a reflection. Mason knew that either it was an optical illusion, or whoever entered the room left no trace in reality. He questioned Laura again. Where were you on the night of your death? In the room. I was sleeping. You're the only one Lady Margaret trusted with the key. You could have entered. I didn't kill her. There was hysteria in his voice. I I heard her talking to someone last night. The voice was male. I was scared. She didn't go. Why didn't you tell me about it earlier? I thought I imagined it. Later he found a drawing in Margaret's room, enclosed in an old book. Graphite, very faded. He was pretending the same creature that Laura drew in her notebook, with the date 1891. The will in the evening. Conway's lawyer finally opened the will. Everyone gathered in the library. Albert Gray is handing over all the property, not to anyone in the family, he began, and the State Museum of History and Mysticism, with the condition that the house will be closed and inaccessible to private individuals. Felix jumped up. What nonsense is that? He motivated this by the fact that the family does not know how to protect the shadows. Mason stood up. That explains everything. Someone knew the contents of the will. Someone wanted it to stay out of force. And for that, the death of Lady Margaret before the official opening. Felix glanced at Edith. That's for Laura, but Mason was looking at Alex Morton. Why did you want a mirror? I'm a collector. It's a rarity. Gothic work. Is it cursed? Minus no, but it's expensive. Mason slowly took out a bunch of keys from his pocket. Found behind a wall in the garden, wrapped in a silk handkerchief. Your monogram, Mr. Morton. Alex paled. It's a setup. Maybe. But the keys have only your fingerprints on them. And one oddity, the inside edge of the handkerchief was wet. Lady Margaret was clutching something tightly in her hands at the time of her death, except it was taken out after. You can't prove it, Alex croaked. No, but the investigation will continue. In the meantime, you are detained.